Yes everybody, this is the moment that you've been waiting for. SCR version 2.0 is out. Well, it's been out for over a week, so let's review it and see what the crack is. So, the first thing that has changed is the opening scene. It now displays Famir Green Depot and Lynn by the Sea, as well as the new SCR logo. Before, it displayed North Shore and Rocket Parade. I don't know why they would display Famir Green Depot on the opening scene, but I'm not gonna complain. We can see the map has changed, due to a link now having a route stopping at Water Newton, which we'll get to shortly, and arguably the star of version 2.0, the new extension sprouting out of Edgemead to Rayleigh Bay. This is used by Diesel Connect trains, but also by Diesel Express trains. You might be asking, what was the point of having Express to Rayleigh Bay? Well, it's kind of to generate a cross-country element in the game, just like what the developers did when they extended Express to Newry in 1.9. The stations on the new line are Slogby, Carnley Bridge and Rayleigh Bay. Here we have our first station on the new line, Slogby, over half a mile from Edgemead. You can see that Slogby is a relatively rural area, with a housing estate by one of the platforms. Also, you will see no overhead lines, and that's because this line can only be run by diesel or by mode trains. It's a fine looking station, not much going on. On the line, you can see semaphore signals, which we'll get to later. The next stop on the line is Carnley Bridge, which only has one platform, hence trains run in both directions. The area around the station is amazing, with some stores on the other side of the road, a strip of green belt and some other buildings. And finally, we get to Rayleigh Bay, used by Connect and Express. It's a pretty good looking station, by the entrance and by the platform area. Now let's have a run through of the new line. We can see the all new driver UI, which we'll talk about later. All I can say is, it takes some time getting used to, and you'll see why. So we are now departing Edgemead heading for Rayleigh Bay. Note that the branch is heading away from the Stepford main line, but before you get to Edgemead from the Leighton area, if you get what I mean. In the new driver UI, the train takes longer to come to a stop than before, which is why you should slow down before you get to the station. Oh shit, I missed the car marker, but at least my train is completely at the platform. By the way, you saw that Slogby's platforms are staggered, but not like at Woodhead Lane. You can see the semaphore signals on the line. If they are diagonal, this means you can pass through them, but if they are horizontal, you must stop before them. Though to be fair, even if you don't know how they work, the driver UI will tell you whether the signal is green, amber or red. We are now coming through a single track area of the line, and the speed limit changes to 50 miles an hour, though to be fair, I don't think it's appropriate to drive at 50, unless you're driving this part of the line on Express. as Carnally Bridge Station is a short distance from the siding. Fuck me, I missed my designated car marker again. Note that the train I was driving is the Class 156, one of the few new rolling stock added to the game, which we'll talk about later. Now it goes back to a double track line, just before we reach the final stop on the line, Rayleigh Bay. You can see the yachts on the dock and on the river. Another thing that's changed is that when you approach a terminus, the speed limit reduces to 15 miles an hour. I think that's a good thing, as you won't be too fast on approach to a station. But when you depart, the speed limit changes to 30 miles an hour. And there we go, that's the Rayleigh Bay line. The schedule summary has changed as well, with next leg meaning you can do the same route in the opposite direction. A few stations have been upgraded as well, these being Stepford Victoria, Stepford Central, Water Newton, Edgemead, Fanemere, Middlecastle, West Wyvern and North Shore. The entrance of Stepford Victoria hasn't changed, but the change comes at platform level. It certainly looks better than before, with the roof lighting and the addition of overhead lines. The overhead lines have been added on the line between City Hospital and Stepford Victoria. Outside of Victoria Station houses a building with the new SCR logo as well. Central Mall has been removed from Stepford Central in favor of a new entrance. It looks pretty good to be fair, and same with the new ticket hall with new escalators. You can see that Stepford Central has had a facelift with many poles added. They're fine, I guess. However, the L-Link platforms at Stepford Central haven't changed, and neither has the L-Link side, which used to be the default spawning point for spawning at Stepford Central as a passenger. Now the default spawning point is the main approach. Another thing I spotted at Stepford Central is that there is a corridor underneath linking the Connect and Express platforms. It's a pretty handy feature to be fair. And outside the station, we see a statue of the late Steve Summer, who was one of the SCR drive managers. Water Newton got an upgrade as well, with the addition of a grit box, vending machines and access to the fast platforms used by the Terminal 3 to Leighton Stepford Road route on L-Link. The entrance has also changed, with the sign "Welcome to Water-Newton." I'm glad to hear that the Water-Newton fast platforms are finally having a use. Edgemead is way better than before, especially the surrounding area. We now have a huge car park and some shops. The platforms have had a good upgrade as well, and apparently it's based off of Newark North Gate. Famir has had a massive facelift, with the addition of a car park, and updated bridge and platforms. I like this better than the previous Famir. The upgraded Mill Castle's entrance is now in a more built-up area, hence the ticket hall is smaller than before. Look, we have an error on the information boards. As you can see, for the trains scheduled for Lynn, the boards display the stations before Mill Castle. The board should only display 3 or 4 stops if going to Lynn, depending on the route. But let's forget about that error, and talk more about the station. Here is the area by the platforms, and that Luxmont. All platforms can be accessed by the passenger like the previous Mill Castle, but the express platforms are still not in use. Now let's talk about West Wyvern, and this looks way better than before, with a new station building, a new car park, another area for the non-drivable Class 66, and so much other stuff which you'll see. You've got a lounge here, which is mint, and you've got a waiting area with a station office inside, which can only be accessed by authorized personnel, but at least you can have a peek inside of it. The West Wyvern area has changed massively as well, with some pylons, a power station, a retail park and other commercial buildings. I also notice that West Wyvern now has 4 platforms, 1 down from before. Platform 1 is now used by Express and Connect trains, Platform 2 exclusively by Express, Platform 3 is used by Connect and Express, and Platform 4 is used exclusively by Connect. And finally we'll talk about North Shore. This looks way better than before, and this station is based off of Stockport. This station has an upgraded ticket hall, and has a lounge added in it. The surrounding area of North Shore has also improved. As well as the station and the surrounding area, the depot has had an upgrade, with a longer train shed, to be able to accommodate longer trains. Speaking of which, some stations have had their platforms extended, in light of longer trains being added to the game later on, such as the Class 390, 745, longer Hitachi units, and more. Now let's move on to the rolling stock, both new and upgraded. The first new train added is a Class 156 on Connect. I was expecting it to be on Water Line, given the relatively low top speed, but I can live with it being on Connect. This is a train that I'd use on the Raleigh Bay lines exclusively. Note that you cannot drive the Class 156 in the Stepford area. Next up is a Class 385 on Connect, which I've been waiting for a long time. It might not be the best looking train in the fleet, but it was worth adding it. Damn, the Class 385 costs quite a bit, at 2,000 points. The Class 156 is more costly, at 1,000 points more than the 385. Good, I was driving quite a lot before the update so that I would have enough points to buy new rolling stock or routes. Next up is the Class 800 on Express. You might be asking, what was the point of adding the Class 800 on Express, when we already have the identical looking 801? Well, in real life, the Class 800 is intended to run on diesel and electric lines, while the Class 801 is only intended to run on electrified lines. Yes, there is a diesel motor in the Class 801, but this diesel motor is not designed to run outside of emergency situations. Then we have the Class 313 on Water Line, which replaced the Class 508. I was expecting this to happen, given that the Class 508 only runs on third rail, while the Class 313 can run on both overhead and third rail. However, the other third rail trains, the classes 444, 458 and 707, have not been removed, and that's because these trains have an area on the roof where a pantograph would be added. The Class 170 got another upgrade, and it looks better than the previous version. The previous version looked like the one from TransPennine Express, which I didn't like, but now we have it as it should be. They also added the Class 170 in 2-coach variant and smaller front and rear lights, as well as a double Class 170 being formed of 2 2-coach multiple units. It's a nice addition to the fleet. Then we get to the upgraded Class 357, which also looks better than before. Let's not forget the Class 171 received an upgrade too. Weirdly, the Class 168 didn't get an upgrade in version 2.0, maybe at some point in the near future. The Class 321 and 319 have received an upgrade after 4.5 years. These certainly look better than before, and apparently the former has an area in the train where a first class area would be, but of course, as Connect doesn't offer first class, this is a declassified area. The HSGs have received a second upgrade, and it's alright. Unfortunately, they still haven't added a sliding door variant for the HSGs. Let's hope these will be added later. I almost forgot that there is a double Class 156 added, where you can walk between the two units. I'm glad to see another double gangway train added to the game, the first one being the Class 158 double, and to be fair, it will only be a matter of time before more double gangway trains come to the game, including to other operators. There have been quite a few new routes added to the game, 7 of them to be precise. These are the new Connect routes, all going to Rayleigh Bay of course. Note that the Rayleigh Bay to West Wyvern route is exclusive to the Class 156. You will also notice that there are no direct routes from the Stepford area to Rayleigh Bay, so, if you want to do that, you can do Stepford Central to Leighton City, then Leighton City to Rayleigh Bay, or Stepford Victoria to Leighton City or Edgemead, then Leighton City or Edgemead to Rayleigh Bay. These are the new Waterline routes, Benton to Connolly, and Newry Harbour to Morganstown. It's good that we now have a direct train route from the Newry area to Morganstown. And finally, we have a new express route, from Rayleigh Bay to Lynn. This isn't a new route, but now, the Terminal 3 to Leighton Stepford Road route stops at Water-Newton. You will also have noticed that now, only diesel trains and bi-mode trains can run on non-electrified routes, which makes sense. Speaking of which, some parts of the network received overhead lines, including at the Connolly branch, the line between Stepford Victoria and City Hospital and at Wester Coast. But unfortunately, not all of the Stepford main line has received overhead lines, particularly at the Benton Bridge area and a bit of the express line between Benton and Hampton Hargate. And let's not forget at Morganstown Docks. Hopefully this will be added very soon. Now let's talk about the updated UIs. There have been changes to the driver, dispatch and guard UIs. Here is the new driver UI. On the left hand side, you will see the rolling stock being driven, then below it, the unit number, the head code and the route number. It also displays the next stop, the scheduled time to arrive, the upcoming signal and for the first time, how far you are to the next signal, which is a handy feature. On the right hand side you will see the speedometer, the speed limit, the actual speed, the throttle response, which will be shown in green, the brake response, which will be shown in red, and has the same icons as before. In other words, how you operate them do not change, such as the H for the horn, T to operate the doors, etc. The red dot on the speedometer indicates the speed limit, the green needle is the speed that you're aiming at, and the blue needle is the current speed. Here is the updated guard UI, which has received a slight facelift, and here is the new dispatch UI. They're pretty easy to use once you get the hang of it. Now let's talk about some other bits added. There are now mileposts now added on certain areas of the network. Kinda useful, but to be fair, I can tell how far I am from a certain stopping station by just looking at the driver UI. There have been some changes to the cancellation announcements, which is that at terminating stations, the announcer will say where the train came from rather than say where it terminates, which makes more sense. But the reason is always, a member of a train crew being unavailable. This is quite vague, and hopefully this will be updated with more reasoning, such as a despawn or something. You can now even hear the train announcements from outside the train now, and the further you zoom out, the less likely you will hear the announcement clearly. The next stop displays have been added to side destination displays on certain trains, a pretty handy feature, on certain trains such as this Class 345. A couple of scenery upgrades were made, such as the addition of a tunnel between Millcastle and West Wyvern, and some abandoned tracks by the old Upper Staplow. Certain rolling stock have received new door sounds, updated horns and new motor sounds. I prefer the new sounds over the old ones. However, the Class 365 hasn't had its door sounds upgraded. The door sounds should be the same as the classes 313, 319 and 321. And apparently the classes 143, 165, 166, 365 and 68 have been rescaled. It's hard to talk about everything that came in the update, especially the tiny details, so I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts. Overall, SCR version 2.0 was a very good update. It featured a new extension, albeit relatively short, some new rolling stock that I have been wanting for years, upgraded stations and trains that look better than before and many scenery upgrades. The driver UI takes some time getting used to, especially when slowing down and coming to a complete stop. However, it's not all perfect, as not all parts of the Stepford Main Line, Greenslead Branch, etc. currently have electric lines. I was also expecting Star E-Lock to get an upgrade in version 2.0, but maybe these will be fixed in future updates. But I'll leave it to you. What are your thoughts on version 2.0? What did you like the most and what did you not like the most? That will be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe for future content, and I will see you in the next video.